Hey there, this is Mike, and today we're going to put together a whisper room. This is going to be just sort of a guideline, a basic idea of how we do it, because they're a little bit different. You have to get the specific instruction manual to the whisper room that you have, and whisper room can get you that manual based on the serial number. But when I was buying mine, I wanted to figure out, like, could I do this myself? Was it going to take two people? How hard is it? What tools did I need? And I couldn't find anything that was a good explanation for what goes into putting together a whisper room. So I bought one, and so I've got all the parts out in the garage. So I'm going to load in the parts, and we'll take a look, and I'll try and walk you through the basics of it. I think you'll find it's actually a pretty straightforward process. So a couple of things we should note is I'm buying mine secondhand. If you buy one brand new retail, it's probably going to come shipped and wrapped really nicely, I guess. Mine didn't. I just took mine apart and threw it in a U-Haul truck, tied it up as best I could, and then brought it over. So the first thing that comes off the truck is the floor isolation mats. So just going to roughly lay these out. First, now that's my guess. So that's my guess on where I think it's going to go. All right, so the first thing that I brought in are the seams. Actually, let me bring one over so you can see it. So these are the corner seams, and it's essentially 2 layers of MDF with bolts put into it. So there's receiver bolts already in there, and it's 2 layers thick. So this is essentially the inside of the room, and this is an overlapping outside of the room that form the corners for the booth. To describe these as heavy is sort of overstating it. They're probably 40 pounds, 50 pounds per corner. So they're heavyweight in terms of sound reduction, but as far as being able to lift it on your own, they're really not that bad. So I'll bring in the floor next. All right, so here's the floor. The floor is relatively heavy. Again, probably 50 pounds, 60 pounds. See, I carried in here without too much trouble. I'm not the best shaped guy. So this one, I don't know how yours will come. Yours may come in more parts than this. The important thing is there are hinges on the corners, and they seem to be identically spaced all the way around, so you can choose sort of how it's arranged. And then there is this bracket that probably will also come as a separate part that you'll have to install. This is where the door will shut, so this forms the lower seal on the door. It's just a bent piece of aluminum. So the door is also going to bolt onto these spots, and these hinges are where the walls bolt on. There's the floor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange this, put the floor down, and get the one corner beam in place. The nice thing is it screws all from the inside of the booth. You don't need to get around the outside of it. But I want to make sure I have my bead in place. That way when I go to install my first wall, I have it already behind. So let me get that set up. What we have in place first is the floor. The only consideration I feel like we have so far is making sure that there's sufficient clearance for the ventilation unit. So the ventilation unit is still out on the truck, and that's going to go on one wall, and that makes one wall a little bit deeper than the rest, based on my best guess. I need about 8 inches of clearance between where the inside lip is, the inside of the wall, and the edge. So the ventilation unit is going to, it protrudes from the edge of the wall. So I want to make sure I have sufficient clearance. So I just go up against my wall, and I've given myself 9 inches, so that way there'll be an inch of clearance over here. It all should fit. So that will go there. I have the first beam in place, so that's already seated in the corner there. And we'll get the ventilation wall in. I'm not gonna lie, that sucked. That's really heavy. I'm sweating through my shirt now. So here's why it sucked. It's heavy. That's one big chunk of MDF. And then on the side, there are these two MDF conduits where the air for the ventilation goes through as an effort to quiet it. Let's see if I can show what we have going here. So, the conduit itself is, I don't know, dryer hose, for lack of a better word. And there's a big ass like PC style fan at the end. So this is like the fan you'd find on a big ass power supply. And it's got a plug. I had the blue tape is for it, I had it taped up. Now what it suggests is it just sort of, the ventilation just sort of sits down here at the bottom, at least according to the assembly instructions. It just sort of rests down here on the bottom. Not sure what that's going to do dust wise. I might futz around with that after. But that's heavy. In the meantime, what you didn't see is that there are these little brackets, hinges, that go right there. So they're these little hinges, and these are what connect the floor to the wall. There's 3 sets that goes around for each of the walls. So I was advised that these break reasonably easily because they're ABS or something. They're just plastic. So I took them off. So these are hinges. So you don't have to be, I'm hopeful, that you don't have to be perfectly at 90 degrees before you install the bracket, right? It can lean against the wall, and then when you put the corner beam in, that's when it will true up to 90 degrees. The only tool that they say you need for this, and in my disassembly it was the only tool I needed, was Phillips head screwdriver. I strongly encourage you to get a Phillips head screwdriver that's on a drill, because that's going to make it go tons faster. I've been told that these are not the strongest steel, so install them gently. Don't go stripping them. They don't, from what I can tell, they don't need to go in, you know, we're not securing a building here, so start just getting them together so you can make whatever adjustments you need, and then you can tighten it all up later. But don't go all gung-ho on it and then realize that you've over tightened something, that you've stripped a bolt, that you've stripped something. And hopefully I'll take my own advice. One thing that is nice is there are 3 different types of bolts, or 3 different types of connections, and so there are 3 different types of bolts. Forgive my dripping sweat, it's hot in here. So there are 3 different kinds of bolts, so it's pretty clear which bolt goes into what scenario. So there's long bolts that go through the MDF to secure it to the corner beams, beads. There's a short bolt that connects the hinge, and then there are chrome bolts for the door. So that seems to be pretty foolproof for the way I see it. So now these are secured, and what's nice is the wall, you know, the wall can be adjusted. I can do this to the wall without risk of hurting the hinge. I think that's, or without hurting the little bracket down there. I think that's brilliant. I've never seen that before, and I just think that's a great way to do it. So next, I think my floor is not level. I'm going to go see if I need any shims or if I need to level this at all. It suggests having a really level floor, and it looks like it leans a little bit. So let's go check it. Yeah, we're definitely not level. So I have a couple of shims. It suggests that while you're assembling it, you shim the floor just so it's level. Then you can take the shims out. Once it's built, it doesn't matter if it leans a little bit. It's just mostly for the comfort of whoever's standing in there, if you feel like you're going to be like falling over. So I'm going to put just a couple of shims under here to see what we do. Right, shims. You just slide these under the floor, and hopefully that'll get a little bit level. So we'll see. luckily it didn't take too much. It's not perfect, but I'm going to say that's good enough for government work. Like I said, nothing here. We're not doing like fine joinery or anything. Everything seems to have a fair amount of tolerance to it. So we're going to hope that that is level enough. So the next thing I'm going to try and do is put this corner beam in, and we do that with some longer bolts, and each longer bolt has a decorative washer to it. So it just goes together, goes through the wall, and there's a bolt that there's a nut that receives it on the other end. Okay, good. So I've got those connected. I don't have them tight, they're just snug. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the back wall so I can start to get these plumb and in shape. Once that happens, then I'll be able to start doing it. Hopefully, I might be able to do this whole thing myself. I had sort of prepared myself to give up at some point and wait for somebody to come and help me, but knock wood, we're going to see if we can do this ourselves. Okay, so the back wall is coming in. This piece actually is probably the lightest of all of them. It's just a plain old piece of 3/4 inch MDF. The most challenging bit that I experienced was up at the very top. You want to make sure that these two walls are plumb. Remember, this one, it can move back and forth. So in order to find where these bolts match, you just have to sort of play around with it and make sure that the surface, the height of the two, the corner bead and the wall, make sure they match. But I'm hopeful that now that I have things reasonably plumb, that the next two walls will go in easier. The next one that goes in is going to be this wall here. So I have to make sure I have a corner bead in place, and then I got to get the last wall in. That one's going to be a little bit more of a challenge because it's got nothing to rest against. So what I think I'm going to end up doing is securing the corner bead in place so that way the wall has at least something to fit into. So far as I can tell, the corner beads they're all identical. There's not like corner bead 1, 2, 3, and 4. They seem to all be identical. So we'll get this one in next. All right, so the next wall to put in is the wall with the window. Windows, there's an inside and an outside to it, so just gotta make sure when you get it in here, when you put it in, make sure you have the right side facing in. So this one is pretty heavy. It's got some glass in it, 2 panes of glass, I think. It's pretty heavy, so it just fits right on the edge. And that's why I put the corner beam in, so that I could get that part seated in there with nothing to lean against. Now we'll make sure that we got everything lined up as best we can. And we'll see if we can get these walls joined together. My main concern is to make sure I don't strip any of these bolts. They just fit into a nut, so you don't want to force them. They should just go in smoothly. That one fit perfectly. So you really should be able to put them in with just your fingers and get them finger tight. And if they don't, that means it's not lined up, and don't try and force it. We want to make sure that everything we want to make sure everything lines up before we get everything tight. Because the next thing to go in is going to be the ceiling. And to be perfectly honest, I'm a little bit nervous about the ceiling because it's heavy and I have to lift it over my head and slide it into this groove. When I took it out, when I disassembled it, it wasn't incredibly heavy, but you know, it's awkward, and if there's one part where you can hurt your back, it's lifting something awkward and heavy up over your head. So, to use all of our safety tricks that we know, lifting with our legs and so forth. Okay, so the ceiling. The ceiling is 2 layers of MDF. Honestly, this is probably the lightest piece in the whole kit. Yours may or may not come with this aluminum bracket already installed. I don't know if that has to go in. It's got stickers on it that indicate the original owner probably had to put this together. So the idea here, lift this up, slide it into place and match up the bricks, or line up all the brackets. So let's see how it goes. I might not be tall enough for this. Oh, there we get it. Nope. All right. Too heavy. Gonna call in a buddy. Hey, buddy. Want to help me? You want to end up on YouTube?
Not really, but
Not
okay.
really. All right, so I'm going to lift this up over our heads, and we're going to try and fit this,
Yes.
you don't have to here, but on your side.
Okay.
You follow?
Yep.
All right, so we lift it, we turn it, lift it up over your head, you gotta press it. You okay?
Yep.
So now, we push and pray. And there we have it. Okay, so little fine-tuning adjustment, and it looks like things are going to come together. So I'm just going to install these. Pause it now, and then we'll get the door. All right, so I realized I didn't stop it. So after I installed the ceiling, the only advice I have for the ceiling is I did start to need to tighten up some of the bolts up at the top in order to get everything to fit nice and plumb. Took a little bit of tweaking, but once I got things mostly snugged up a little bit tighter, the ceiling just sort of really fell into place. I didn't turn the camera on for this, but I put in the next corner bead, and that's so I have a place to slide the door in so the door will stand up since it's just me. My helper is gone. I realize now that this video should be called Watch a Fat Man Sweat While He Does a Whisper Room, but we're on the home stretch. The last thing we have to do is the door and a corner bead, and then you'll have the idea of how it works. So let's try and get the door in. The door is no joke. The door is heavy. Maybe 120 pounds, the door. Once it's up, it's pretty easy to, because it's not that wide, it's not that awkward. So we want to make sure that we have it up on the lip. And then it's got to match up to the aluminum. There's aluminum corners up at the top that it's got to fit into. So that's going to be the hardest part. Getting it to fit in. So now if I did this right, hopefully I can get it to slide right in there. Door. So the door fits in a little bit differently. There's two aluminum corners, the top and bottom, and they give you, I guess to indicate that it matches up with the aluminum, but you get silver colored bolts to match them up with. So I'm going to screw those in next. Then the corner bead. So I'm going to stop it here and I'll screw those in. There's just 3 along the bottom, 3 along the top, and then the inside ones to match up with the corner bead. So I'll do that next. Okay, so sweat. It's hot. This is a hard job. I will say it doesn't suck like I heard a lot of people say that it really sucks. It's not that bad as long as you have some reasonable strength to be able to lift these heavy pieces. I'm going to say you have to be able to manhandle 150 pounds. I did need a helper for the roof, as you saw. Couple of other pieces of advice that I can have if you haven't been assembling as I've been doing it. A drill, absolutely critical. Trying to do this by hand, I think it would be damn near impossible. The next thing is, see if I can get a focus on this. The bit. These are all really fat Phillips head screws. Make sure you have a bit that is fat. I don't know if they're sized by number. I'm actually not sure how they do it, but there's a, right, you can get a small Phillips head and you can get a fat one. See how this one's blunt on the end? The screws are all real, they've got a fat Phillips head, so make sure you have a fat one. The next thing, these bolts, I swear, they're made out of warm butter because they're really easy to strip. So make sure you set the clutch on your drill. Let's see if we can get a focus on it. Make sure you set the clutch on your drill. Don't have it all the way up on drill or on any of these high settings. I set mine at 18. That seems to get them nice and snug, but the clutch will engage, will start to slip before you strip the bolts, because I swear these things are made out of paper mache or something. They're if I had a complaint, is that these bolts are all far too they're far too soft. Focus again. So when you're adjusting your screw, sorry I can't get this on camera because it's pitch black in here, but when you're drilling, you hear how it changes to that clutch slipping sound. That way you can be sure you're not going to strip these bolts. So I'm just tightening up the last couple, and then assembly will be complete. But really, I think the words of wisdom that I have to offer are, don't try and force anything. It should all fit together so that you can fit these bolts in finger first. If you're trying to hammer them in or having really difficult time turning the screws, you really shouldn't. It should all fit together. So if you have things that aren't lining up, it just means that you're racked in some way. You're out of perfect plumb. So that thing we did in the beginning to make the floor level, I'd say that's important, because all of these seams, all the bolts match up, and if they don't, that means that you're tipping this way or you're tipping this way, and your parts aren't lining up. So as you lean it, your parts aren't lining up. So you want to make sure that those parts are perfectly together, and it all should just fit. So let's cross our fingers. It should fit. The door doesn't. It's quiet in there. The door fits. It doesn't rack. It's not snug to go in and out. The door should open and close very easily. Overall, I'd say that this assembly took $2 hours by myself, carrying it in from the truck. So not too bad. This is a 48 by 48. If you have a smaller one, that would be a really small booth. Yeah, you could probably do it. The parts just get lighter. Bigger ones, I'd say this is about as big as I'd be willing to try on my own. If you had to go any bigger than this, gotta be a two-person job, because I don't know how you do the ceiling, to be perfectly honest. So that's it. Let's see if we can bring it in here. Oh, extreme close-up. You can watch me sweat, boy, because it's hot. So this is the sound of the naked booth without any treatment in it. It is definitely reverberant in here. So you're going to definitely need to treat the inside, however you elect to do that. I'm a voiceover artist, so my treatment is going to be a couple fold. It came with these Auralex pads. I'm not the world's biggest Auralex fan myself. I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is taking these panels that I made that are OC 703, nice and firm, make great bass traps. I'll probably end up putting one of those against the back wall to try and grab some of those bass frequencies. And then I'll probably make in these corners, I'm going to bet some diagonal bass traps, because as you can hear, man, this thing, it has a very boxy sound at the moment, and we're going to want it to be dead is the way we're going to want this thing to actually sound. Oh my God, look at me sweating. So that's it. The last thing to do in here is to plug in and figure out the ventilation. Because really, I mean, I think, they say just put it like that. But I'll probably create something for it. And the astute viewer will note in the very beginning that there's an outlet behind here, but it's dead. So I'm going to have an extension cord that feeds this. Now I think, let's see, parting notes. It came with a fluorescent light that nobody, don't put a fluorescent light in your booth. Because I don't know if you can hear, this is a fluorescent light and you can hear it. It buzzes. That's crazy. You can't put a fluorescent light inside your vocal booth because it defeats the purpose of your vocal booth. It's going to buzz like crazy. Don't do that. Figure out some kind of lighting scheme. I'm going to see if I can find some like LED lights that don't generate any heat. Battery operated, I'm thinking. Not sure yet. I'll figure that part out. And that's it. Treating the inside, figuring out some lighting, and then we'll do some audio tests. So we'll see how that goes. That's it. That's your Whisper Room assembly video. I hope it helps.